Hello everyone, this is Chelsea Perry, clinical hypnotherapist. I am a past life regression specialist and QHHT level 2 practitioner. Today is episode 2 of Conversations with the Higher Self. So episode 2 is connecting in with your higher self. This is basically a deep dive into how you can connect with your higher self, whether that be through hypnosis, meditation, or any mindfulness practice really. But this is a really fun Q&A interview with the higher self. But on top of that, at the end of this episode, so about halfway through, you'll find that I have also added the other portion of this session that I did with Jennifer. So at the beginning of this session that we did, Jennifer actually experienced a past life before we started the interview process with the higher self. And so I really wanted to find a way to include this, and I wasn't sure if this was going to be a separate video or not. But at the end of this part with the higher self, this interview that we do, I have included the session that she experienced. And the reason I think it's important is because there's a message for humanity. And I think it's really interesting how it brings new light to some of the ways that we live in our day-to-day world. So I'm leaving the end of this video with that session and the higher self's message to humanity. So I hope you stay tuned for the entire thing. Don't forget to begin commenting with your questions for the higher self. Any questions you might have from here on out, I'm able to add those into the end of each episode when we do our recordings. So don't forget to comment those questions, like, and subscribe to the channel so that you can keep watching as those episodes get uploaded, and I hope you enjoy. So now I want to move into the next part of connecting with the higher self. This is more for the deep dive into how people can connect to their higher self through various methods. And so I know I covered it a little bit on the last time, but I want to ask, how do we know which part of our energetic field we are connecting to, which is, say, the higher self versus intuition versus subconscious? How do we know the difference?
The higher self will speak to you through intuition. As the connection is stronger, then you may begin to hear it in your mind, or you may begin to get a knowing of what's correct information. But in the beginning, it's always a whisper. It's always just a gut feeling, or just a small sense that something is different. The subconscious is a direct result of the programming that the ego has taken in. So it controls your reactions to something. If you've been programmed to react to an external force in a certain manner, it will always try to react the same way. It's automatic, whereas the information from the higher self will not be.
So are you the same higher self that we have every lifetime that we live?
Yes.
And does that extend beyond Earth, or does it change?
No. It is the same. It is what many refer to as the soul, the energetic being having a human experience.
And so the human is just a piece or a part?
It's just the vessel that enables the higher self, the soul, the energetic part of you to have this experience at this time.
And so how do we know when we are connected to our higher selves, inside or outside of hypnosis?
You can feel the awareness when you start to see patterns in society. Many people will call them angel numbers, or they say their guides are speaking to them. And it may in part be your guides choosing to connect with you that way, but in many cases it's also the higher self choosing to find a tangible way to communicate when other methods are ignored.
And so it really doesn't matter the avenue. You will feel the truth or the comfort.
That is correct.
And so what would it feel like if it was not the higher self? What might that be experienced as?
If it brings you fear, it's not the higher self. If it brings you doubt or worry, it's not the higher self. The higher self will always want you to succeed and be improved and better. And so they may push you in a certain manner, but it's always for the betterment of self.
And so are there varying degrees of connectivity to the higher self?
Yes.
And is each person different?
Yes.
And why would that be?
It has to do with the stages of connection. Some people right now are completely disconnected, operating solely off of ego and subconscious, which is dangerous. Fully programmed.
And they react out of fear?
They react out of fear. They react out of the programming that they've been taught. And to change that programming can be difficult at times.
So you can tell when someone's connected to their higher selves by maybe their behaviors?
Correct.
Or their actions?
Correct. They will have empathy for others. They will be a kinder spirit. They will want people to succeed other than themselves. They are living in service to others. They care for others. They care for themselves too, because that's a human quality. But they don't wish ill will on others. That is programming.
And so, say someone is partially connected, or maybe beginning to become more connected to their higher self. How do they build that connection? What could they do to create a stronger bond to their higher self?
They have to desire it first. There has to be a conscious choice to restore that connection before anything can occur.
And once they do,
then they have to focus their energy on it. It's all about intention.
well, and as humans, we like to kind of have a set of instructions, and I know it varies from person to person, but just intention may make it difficult for people to wrap their mind around building that. So is there...
It can't be forced. If you force it, that's the ego. You have to allow the connection to happen organically. So spending time slowly, focusing on that through meditation, set the intention at the beginning of your meditation that you wish to connect to the higher self, that you wish to feel the higher self and increase your closeness, to be able to hear the higher self more clearly than you currently do. And then be patient and be quiet and allow that to come through. And when you first feel it or hear it, don't be scared of it, because that's programming. You have to reject that programming. And slowly but surely over time, you will begin to restore that connection and reject the programming that was keeping you disconnected in the first place.
Is there a way to obtain access to the higher self if you're not in a meditative state or in a hypnotic state?
Not as clearly. Not as clearly. Humans have not evolved high enough yet in consciousness. There are tools that can be used, such as dowsing, where the higher self can connect with the energetic field of a person and enable the person to ask questions of the higher self and then receive information that way. That is a very clear way to have that connection at this time for some individuals. At times you can have a knowing that comes through or hear information. And again, typically that will come from the higher self, but it's not constant. It's not a reliable, constant form of connection. You need to be placed in a state where the ego and the subconscious can be placed so that they cannot interfere and filter the information to be able to have a full conversation with the higher self like we are now.
And that's why hypnosis is so effective?
Correct.
In meditation?
Because it quiets the ego and the subconscious enough that I can come through.
And what about those that have difficulty allowing the conscious mind and the ego to set aside long enough to build that connection?
That's the fear of the programming. It's so strong that it's not willing to let go for fear of what may come through. You can't fear what you don't know, but so many do.
But we can work through that programming a little at a time.
Correct.
Or assist through this process.
Correct.
Is it more effective to connect to the higher self using hypnosis over other methods, such as meditation?
Hypnosis is effective once a connection has been created by the individual. Hypnosis can be difficult when a connection has not yet been established, which is why many have trouble accessing the higher self under hypnosis. This is why meditation and intention to create a connection is very important to be done prior to a hypnosis session.
And so that is why it was important to create a recording for people to listen to before they came in.
That is correct.
And that is what it's for, is to create the connection before they come in?
Yes, to give them the understanding of why it's necessary to be able to have access to the higher self. Because without them understanding the need and without them creating the intention, it's very difficult to come through.
So then why does it take creating this connection to the higher self through hypnosis first to then allow people to build that connection afterwards?
Some people have to see it to believe it.
And so that's why they are pulled to do a session, so that they can create that connection.
Yes. Some people are naturally open-minded. Jennifer is one of those. Wide open to any and all beliefs, which made her connection very easily. She's had it from birth. But other people are very skeptical. Their programming runs very deep, and they have to experience something before they can begin to release the blocks placed by their ego and by their subconscious.
I was one of those people, so I understand that.
Correct.
So how can we live day to day that would allow us to better connect to our higher selves or create that stronger connection?
The easiest way would be to recognize when you're reacting to something. Recognize that as programming. And when you recognize it, you can work to reverse it and to change it. If you always react to something out of fear, the next time it scares you, choose to react differently. That weakens the grip of the programming placed on you at the subconscious level by the ego. And then once you start to loosen the grip that programming has on you, it will make your efforts to restore connection even greater.
And what about when the ego fights back in the sense of protecting us, the fear programming?
The ego filters the information. If something hurt you in the past, it will automatically try to protect you from being hurt again. That's where the programming comes into play. But in that moment, when you start to react to something, if you initially go, wait a minute, this is what I always do. I'm going to do something different this time, and you make a conscious choice, you are literally rewriting the programming for the ego. Instead of the ego writing the programming, you're telling it, no. I don't have to be afraid. You don't have to protect me in this. I'm okay. Look, see? Everything's okay. And it will start to rewrite what it tells the subconscious based on your new experience.
So the person has to put forth effort.
Correct. Nothing in this life is easy. You only get what you put your energy into, your effort, your intention. If you want to have a connection to the higher self, you have to put the work in. It won't be given to you, not in this life.
Would Jennifer have had such a strong connection to her higher self if we had not done this process together over the last few years?
No.
How has that changed her life going forward now?
She is a more balanced individual now than she was. She has the innate ability to see through the programming that is placed on the public. In the past, however, without her strong connection to the higher self, she would have seen it and discarded it just to fit in. Whereas now she understands the importance of why. She can see it. She can see the patterns. She has the higher self to confirm if what she is seeing, if she's understanding it correctly. And then she can stand in her convictions and be a lighthouse for others who are struggling with the same questions. It's hard to go against what everybody else is doing. It's hard to be different. It's hard to break the programming. But because she's been able to do it to some extent, she can guide others and be a source of strength for others to see that it's possible.
Is that why people gravitate to her?
She would probably tell you that they don't gravitate to her. She doesn't see it.
I've seen it.
She doesn't feel that she is special in any way, but she just is who she is.
When we have a more connected intuition, as we build our spirituality and our connections, does the higher self play a part in that? Does it assist with that process?
To some extent. The higher self wants you to evolve and grow. And if it sees that you're being stagnant or going down a path that's not going to help you, they would like to be able to step in and assist and to guide you back on the right path. But it's hard to do so when there's no connection. If it would be like screaming into a void. No one's going to hear you. So the connection is important to help the person evolve. You know, there's been many, many, many lifetimes that some people have lived where the higher self has had to just sit back and watch because they can't help. And it's a frustrating, helpless feeling.
I'm sure it feels the same for the human experiencing the disconnect.
Well, the human doesn't recognize it until after. Upon death, you're able to connect with the higher self once more, review what you did and what you didn't do. And so many will vow to do it differently the next time. But as soon as you drop back into human form, you forget.
It is very difficult not to forget.
That is true. But many are coming in now that remember more. The consciousness of the planet is evolving to the point that we are able to connect more and remember more. We don't want to backslide.
So I know at some point in the last couple of years, when we first began this process, you mentioned that humanity was at a crossroads. And I just wanted to check in and see where we are now as a collective. Have we made progress?
Correct.
In the right direction?
Correct.
Despite it seeming so chaotic?
Correct.
And so what do we need to know as a collective now? What can you tell us to assist us going forward?
To just focus on loving each other. Despite your differences, despite the programming that so many are facing right now and struggling to overcome, despite the hate for others that their programming is going to make them put out into the world, just continue to be a loving, caring spirit, and they'll either overcome their programming or they won't. Not everyone will be able to do so. But you don't want to go down with them. enough people have chosen to reject the programming that they've been receiving and to do what's best for themselves, to follow their intuition, to follow their heart, to listen. And they're listening to the higher self. It may feel like a whisper. It may feel like just a tickle at the back of your brain. But they're doing it. And the more they do it, the stronger the connection will become.
The more that they recognize it's there.
Correct.
Is there anything else you want to tell us as we speak about the higher self? Is there anything that's important for us to know?
Just to be vigilant of be vigilant of the information that you take in, and be vigilant of how you perceive it. And if you can recognize that something is trying to program you, reject it, change it. If you catch yourself reacting to something, ask yourself why. Why do I react this way? If you're afraid of something, ask yourself why. Why am I afraid of this? And then look to see if it ever actually did harm you, or if it's programming. Or if you always just accepted something because that's the way it is. Stop and take the time to ask why, and understand where the programming comes from. It's all about introspection and being aware of the information you're taking in and how it's affecting you. Because if you can remove as much programming as possible, that gives space for the higher self to come through.
It makes it easier to hear beyond the noise.
Correct. And it's noise. It's all noise. It's all a distraction. Everything is a distraction meant to keep you locked in a lower frequency and a lower timeline where you're disconnected and easier to be manipulated and controlled. That's the game. But can you override that?
Well, I want to say thank you for assisting with these questions today. I'm going to let this be the end of part 2, and I want to say just begin to explain the first thing that you're noticing.
I can't tell what it is. It's
It will become clearer as you focus in on what you're seeing. Try to explain it the best that you can.
I thought it was a tunnel with light at the end, but I can't tell.
Are you going through this tunnel?
Yes, and it is dark, but it's not dark where I can't see. It's like everything is like dark blue, almost like underwater, but not water.
What does it feel like to be going through this?
It's confusing.
As you look down at your body, what do you notice?
I can't see myself. I just see that overhead is this dark, almost like navy blue. And it's not still.
So it's moving?
Yes.
Is it going in a certain direction?
No.
Is it going back and forth?
Swirling, but slowly. It's different movements.
Are you moving towards it?
I'm just in it.
Well, I want you to bring your focus out around you in a broader view. And as you begin to focus more on the broader view around you, what do you notice?
It's a tunnel that goes under the water. You could It's a tunnel that goes under a river. So instead of crossing the river from above, you could cross it from underneath.
Tell me more. Are you still going through this tunnel?
Yes, it's very wide, but dark because there's no light within the tunnel. The only light comes from above through the water.
But you can still see.
Enough to move in the dark because there's you don't have to worry about the direction you're going because there's only one direction. And you're not going to hit anything because it's open.
Is there anything else in there with you?
No.
So it's empty?
Yes.
And so why would you choose to go through the tunnel rather than over the water?
It's easier. It's a more direct route.
And so what are you doing now?
I'm crossing from one end to the other.
So there's more than one tunnel?
No, it's a direct tunnel from one location to another.
Tell me more about what you notice as you're going through this tunnel.
S- It reminds me of, I don't understand. It reminds me of those tunnels at an aquarium where everything exists above you and you don't have to walk, but the floor will move you through it, and you can move from location to location without having to physically move.
So like the little floors that move along a conveyor belt underneath?
Yes.
So are you actually in the water, or are you in more of a tunnel where it's dry?
No, I'm dry. But I can see, like, from the top. The top is not glass. I don't know what it's made of, but I can see through it, and light is coming through, and it's making everything, illuminated, but still dark.
And are you close to the end of this tunnel?
No. There's no way to Okay, so we're not supposed to use lights in the tunnel because we don't want anyone to know it's there. We don't want to draw attention to it.
And why wouldn't you want to draw attention to it?
Because it's like a hidden passageway between locations.
And so as you move forward quickly until you reach the end of this tunnel, tell me what you begin to notice around you.
It comes out to a chamber inside a much larger structure, like underground. It's a direct route between two structures that enable you to cross under the river between them quickly and without detection, or to move materials between them without risk of them being lost or detected.
And are you able to see now that you're getting out of the tunnel?
Yes.
Tell me about your body. What do you notice when you look down?
It looks human, normal. I'm wearing a type of sandal with long straps, but you can't see them because I'm wearing what looks like a long dress. And I don't understand.
Just try to explain it to me. What do you notice?
It doesn't look like anything I recognize. My hand has in my hand is a device that it resembles a tablet. I open things with it and move things with it, and I can create light with it if I need it. it's in my right hand, but I can't use it. Like I couldn't use it in the tunnel.
But when you look at your hands, do they look young or old?
Young?
And does your body feel healthy?
Yes.
What kind of a dress are you wearing? What color?
White.
And so what are you doing now that you're in this building? Is it above ground?
The building is, but there are levels of the structure that are underground, which is where I have come into.
So walk me through what's going on as you're walking into this building, this part of the building.
When I came through the tunnel to the end, there was a doorway, and I had to enter a code to leave it. So there's security. And once I walked through the doorway, there were 2 guards, one on either side. And they looked at me and nodded that I walked through in a form of, recognition that I was allowed to be there. And then they resumed their post as I walked past. And there's a long staircase at the end that I have to walk up to go up to the main floors. I think this structure is, I think it's many things. I think it's partly an energy source from the water, and the 2 structures are somehow linked together through the tunnel so that we can monitor how they're operating and quickly move between them. They work together. The structures work together. That's why we have to move back and forth between them to make sure they're operating correctly.
So you work on the buildings to make sure that they work?
Not like maintenance, but yes, oversee operations.
More on the technology side, maybe?
Yes.
So tell me what you're doing now.
When I climb up the stairs to a main floor, I have to go through another secure door, and there's a room that has screens and people sitting at each station in front of a screen monitoring the operations of how it's run. It's similar to hydroelectricity, but not the same.
And as you're looking around, is there a name for the building or the company that you're working for?
No, there's no name. It's not a company. It's not profit. It's hard to explain. It's not like where the company operates for a currency. It operates so that because it needs to, because the people require the energy that it puts out for daily life. So it's just like a role in society. It's something we have to do.
And so what are you doing now that you're in this room?
So this fork monitors the energy output by, I don't understand, the water, the energy that is, somehow it takes energy from the water and then also from the air. It's a pyramid structure. It's got a pointed top. And so it draws in energy from the top, and it draws it into the structure, and then somehow is converted into a usable form through something to do with the water. Maybe the water, I don't understand how the water comes in. The water is what powers the device that converts the energy pulled from the air into a usable source. So we need the river, we need it flowing to be able to convert it. And that's why we need the tunnel too, to check on the river and how it's operating, the health of the river. But it's two structures that work on either side of it. So we're not taking water from the river. We don't want to take the water because it's important. We don't take anything.
You just monitor?
We monitor it because we need it to be healthy so that it can power what we need to pull the energy. It's not like we're depleting a resource. It's a renewable resource, and we're making sure that it's staying that way so that we can continue converting it.
And so it completely runs itself through the system? Correct.
Yes. Without harming anything, or without hurting the atmosphere or hurting the local land around us.
And do you talk to anyone?
No, they all seem very intent on their jobs at hand. They acknowledge my presence, but similar to the guards, just an acknowledgement and then back to work. Everyone's very task-oriented.
And so what do you find yourself doing now?
I'm moving to the top so I can check the top where the energy from the air is drawn in.
What does the outside look like? Can you tell what it's made of?
Of the structure?
Mm-hmm.
It's very bright. It's white, and it's almost hard to look at the top. The very top is very, very, almost like a lighthouse. You can see the energy coming in from the atmosphere and lighting it up.
Where does the light come from?
It's a byproduct of the energy. It's not an actual light. It just glows. And then it's drawn into the very top. So the building itself is white, but the very top is made of a reflective surface that makes it appear to glow as it's being drawn in.
And does it look like it's working properly as you're checking it?
It does, but I can see that the structure on the other side of the river is not. Instead of the energy flowing in like it's supposed to, it's almost like somebody blocked it, so it can't flow. And there's a buildup at the top, which is not good. The energy is building up instead of being able to move through the system like it needs to. And I can see myself running back down the stairs because this is like, it's bad. It's worst case scenario. Everybody's running and yelling and trying to alert other people on what to do. It's like a nuclear reactor that's having a meltdown.
And how long does it take for that process to happen?
Not very long.
And so what do you find yourself doing now?
We're sealing it up. We're sealing up our side of the river, our side, our structure from the other side. The security guards in the tunnel are, there's another door that they're putting down over the tunnel so that we're sealing ourselves up. And there were people in that tunnel that were trying to escape to our side.
But they can't get through?
No, we had to seal ours to protect ourselves.
You don't have time to let them through?
No.
And so how do the other people know? Are they aware that their side is messing up?
They are, and they're trying to run for safety. And the closest place would be to our side because our structure is insulated. So from the inside, we would be okay as long as our energy is flowing correctly. Okay. But for them, because it's not flowing correctly, the blast is going to blast inside their structure, which protects the people on the outside. But unfortunately, their security measures lock them in as well to protect the people on the outside.
How does it protect the people on the outside of the structure?
It keeps the energy, the blast, contained. And it can't escape to harm anyone on the outside. It's a risk of the job, and we know it. If there's a failure, we go down with it.
And you choose to do this?
Yes, it's an honor to do this.
And why is that?
Because it's what's needed.
And so what's happening now?
We can hear them begging us to break protocol and let them through, but we cannot. So we stand on the other side of the door with our heads hung and just honor the sacrifice that they are making for everyone. Nobody is sad. It's an understanding. They are panicked, but we understand that this is the role. This is what we have to do if there is a malfunction. And so we understand the risks and do not become emotional about it.
And so what do you notice now? What's going on?
We realize we don't hear them anymore. So now we recognize that we must resume operations, back to work, and a team will need to be brought in to repair the malfunction on the other structure and return it to work, because that's what's necessary.
And it can just be repaired like that?
Yes. It's a risk when the energy comes in through the top. Sometimes if it doesn't have proper flow and there's a buildup, the only way to discharge that energy is unfortunately through the inside of the structure, to dissipate it so that it doesn't break down the entire system. And the people that work there recognize that it's a risk, but the sacrifice is necessary to keep everything else running the way it needs to.
Does this happen often?
No.
So this is a rare occurrence?
That's our job, to monitor, to ensure it doesn't happen. But something must have gone wrong.
And so, when do you find out what happened?
I don't think we found out the cause.
It became a mystery?
I don't think we understood exactly what caused it to happen. I think that's why we monitor it so closely, to see if there's a pattern. Yes, that's why we monitor so closely, is because we are looking for the pattern to determine why.
But you don't find one?
Not in my time there.
And so now you resume, as usual, back to duties?
Everybody back to work.
Well, as you're experiencing this, we will leave her there on her journey. She's experiencing this life, this place, and you will begin drifting and floating, floating and drifting. And as you do, I want to ask if we may speak to the higher self.
Yes.
We may speak to Jennifer's higher self.
Yes.
I respect the power of the higher self because it does a very good job of assisting and taking care of Jennifer's body. And it does a very good job at assisting her. And so I want to tell the higher self that we respect it and appreciate it for the help that it is giving us today and before and any day from here on out. But I always ask permission to ask questions. Do I have permission to ask questions?
Yes.
I want to ask the higher self today, is it aware of what we have been planning for today?
Yes.
Can I ask the higher self why? Why did you show her that life with the pyramids?
This was a lifetime that focused around service to others. Everything they did there was in service to the other people that lived in that area. And they understood their duty, and they did it without question.
And why does she need to see that?
Because in this lifetime, very few live in full service to others.
Why is that important?
It's something that's been forgotten and needs to be relearned by the people living in this time.
And how would we benefit from knowing how to be of service to others?
Because it can be fulfilling to live for something greater than yourself.
And how do we do that going forward now?
You can start by making very small steps. Just choosing to think of others in your actions before yourself.
And why have we lost that?
We've become more focused on the individual and have forgotten about the greater good and how to take care of each other.
And what do we gain by doing this, by focusing more on others instead of ourselves?
It's a feeling of connection, of bringing you closer to Source, to feel part of a larger community outside of just yourself, to feel that you have a purpose and a place outside of just yourself. And that was what that community and that time strive to do, to live in service to each other and to understand that role. It's a opposite of how existence is today, where everyone is in service to self, and how an individual feels and thinks. That is what is important now versus the benefit of the community as a whole.
And so is that something that's important for us to learn now?
We need to understand the balance, not shift too far one way or the other, but we do need to have the balance.
Are we moving more towards that as a people?
We're beginning to.
When was that life?
Very, very, very long ago.
Is it a time that we would recognize?
No.
It's further back.
Yes.
And why do we have no knowledge of it now?
It was not here.
Where was it? Is there a name for it?
There is.
Is it a place we would recognize?
No.
Is it within our galaxy?
No.
Thank you for helping with that.